Welcome to another episode of the FileForms Business Compliance Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Tumminello, CEO and co-founder of FileForms. It's a pleasure to be hosting another guest, an industry leader and pioneer in technology within the accounting practice management world. Ian Vacin is here from Karbon to share more about our recent partnership and embedded integration. So Ian, say hello to our guest today.
Hey, Frank, thanks for having me on, and pleasure to be here. I'm super excited about today's conversation.
Excellent. And thank you so much for joining us today from San Diego, if I'm not mistaken. Great place to be joining from. So, Ian, if you don't mind, just give folks a little bit of background on yourself, your entrepreneurial journey, what pain points you saw in building Karbon initially, how you guys have expanded, and then ultimately we can touch on our new partnership.
Yeah, going back in the Wayback Machine, this might be a while. I'm a little older than I'm not gonna lie.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, my first entrepreneurial journey was back in the late 90s before the .com. And so I took over leadership role in actually what would be considered an AI company today. And as all good entrepreneurs, it's always a hard road. I was not successful in that one. Went back to grad school, came back with a double master's, and then I decided that finance was really important because it wasn't in that particular firm. Learned that accountants were really, really important and what they do for small businesses. So I worked at Intuit for 10 years, led different divisions of QuickBooks and Quicken, and ultimately the accountant channel, and then brought Xero to the US with a couple other folks and ran that for 3.5 years, and then started Karbon 12 years ago. And so Karbon was an understanding that for most firms, most accounting firms, you might sit together in the same room with 6 people, but you have no idea what's going on with the client because it's all strewn between different systems, different documents, different email boxes, and so forth. And that's what Karbon was born from, was bringing all those communications and work into one place to know the right person doing the right thing at the right time with the right system, ultimately get the work done as efficiently and as profitably as possible. So that's the history.
I love it. What are some of the pain points that you've seen in firms that really inspired you to really kind of get off on the track of automating so much of their manual process and creating that transparency across the board for firms?
It was really just the frustration where we heard time and time again, and it depended on whether you owned the firm, whether you managed the firm, or an individual. An owner just wanted to see visibility across everything that was happening and know that they were driving a profitable firm to make sure all the people that were working there were well taken care of. Employees are the number one priority for accounting firms. For those who were managing the firm, it was really understanding who's working on what and what the status was so they could make sure that things were moving in the right direction. And those who were individuals needed to know what was next, which client needed to be serviced at that time, because the load of the work, because it's so repetitive, and there's so much volume, firms just don't have enough people. You needed to be able to minimize all the lag time, but then have all the information at your fingertips to get things done. And that's why that's why when we built a work platform, we aren't necessarily where the work is actually done. Our job is to make sure that the eyeballs are going to the right systems to do the right things to drive the outcome of the business, which is profitability.
Certainly. And partnerships has been a key part of your growth journey, arguably since the beginning. So I'm curious, now that you've become the modern practice management system for firms really looking to drive those operational improvements, what made sense about FileForms and the compliance services that we offer that make this partnership make sense today?
Yeah, the best tech companies are ones that are focused. And I think that's where maybe folks in my space, they try to do everything for everybody, but then you end up doing nothing for everyone. And when we focus on that, we're an orchestration product. Our job is to make sure that we're getting the resources in the right place to do the work. And so my job is to make sure work goes smoothly. That doesn't mean necessarily I do the work itself. And that's when you think of all the different activities that an accounting firm has to cover, there's so much broad variety. And so generally it falls into 7 services: payroll, accounting, bookkeeping, tax and compliance specifically, audit, advisory, and then consulting to some degree. And that's just a lot on a firm. All those services may exist in a 4 or 5 person firm. Generally, it all exists in a large firm. But when you look at tax and compliance, it's a foundation of a business. And a lot of that becomes not only how you help a small business maybe start, but maybe just what they have to do each day. And that's something that they're not thinking about. They're trying to think about how to make the next widget, how to find the next customer. They're not thinking about, well, do I have to do my annual filing? What does it take? Or when they're starting out, they don't really know, how do I actually form my business? And that's where the accounting firm is able to provide real value. And the reality is the firm doesn't want to think about it. So any sort of activity that's proactive, done for them, that comes with a lot of trust and appreciation. And that's what their clients are looking for. And that's where things like file forms, like what you guys have been able to do, is it's taking the weight and the work out of the work itself, but it's allowing for those things to be done on behalf of the client in such an easy way that they don't have to think about it, both the client and the accountant. It becomes just part of doing business and doing good business. And that translates into high NPS or customer client satisfaction. And that ultimately drives referrals, that drives more business, and you're doing more for the client, which again is driving higher profitability overall. So that's why it's super important.
Without a doubt. Is compliance something that does come up in all the or all the client conversations that you have? I mean, I feel like folks this day and age are so focused on, scaling revenues, mitigating manual process. But have folks come to you at all asking for compliance services specifically, or a better tool or solution than the legacy providers that have served this space historically?
I think what's the old adage, there's the only thing that are guaranteed are death and taxes, right? And in that, taxes expanded to compliance, right? It's funny because over the last 12 years in this journey, there's been folks that says that compliance is dead, payroll is dead. But the reality is you can't actually serve a client and have the full understanding of the client relationship unless you understand all the pieces of what needs to be done for them. And when you're not serving them on certain areas of that service opportunity, somebody else is. And that means somebody else has part of that relationship as well. And so when you're, in this day and age, when you're trying to do more with less, do more services with clients with less work to do it, that's what drives true profitability. That's where this becomes important. So I think what's interesting is what's become up more and more is accounting firms are realizing the importance of it. And so we've been asked more and more around, well, what are you providing to help us make that job easier? And generally it's been disjointed systems, which means that anytime you put friction there, it makes it harder for the firm to actually get the work done. And therefore the profitability drops, but then also the staff members that have to do it are less likely to do it because they're doing the more repetitive things overall. But if you don't do these compliance activities, then the client is in a really bad spot, and rushing it at the last minute means most of the time you're getting information from them and you're having to put them on task in a really hurried fashion. And now you don't look like you're providing the best service. And so anything you can do to lower the friction, make it easy, and ultimately just make it part of doing business with the client, it's going to drive more revenue, but it's also going to, provide better client trust and service.
The amazing part about Karbon is how much data you have, given how you serve your clients and your firms in such a comprehensive manner to really provide that transparency. Now that File Forms actually exists inside of your practice management solution, what do you think that will unlock for firms in the spirit of frictionless onboarding and profitability?
The ability to have more information serves you in terms of your client relationship and your client intelligence overall, and the ability to serve in different ways. The ability to have file forms, be deeply embedded in terms of the integration and being able to work really fluidly through that, again, creates high velocity on the work itself. And being able to then have the information, be able to serve up to file forms, but then to have the return of what's actually been done gives the heritage and the understanding of that client. So what our customers look for in most accounting firms is they want to have a 360-degree view of the client. That means every service that's been done, everything that's been filed, everything that's been understood, and how that ultimately gets served up ultimately. We had a little drum beat in there. That was fun.
That's right. All the effects.
That's why people know this is real.
That's right. That's right. This is not AI, folks. These are two entrepreneurs sharing how we can improve your practice in real time.
I think it goes back to I was just reading something today on Reddit. I got pointed to me, and there was a lot of folks that were saying, hey, there's a lot of integrations, and we are a best of breed platform. We have a lot of integrations, but they want to know what's really meaningful. They want integrations that actually have depth, that ultimately not just move data around, but do something with the data and inform and provide intelligence. I think this is a really prime example of where you guys at Fileforms have really gone the extra mile to make it so it's really easy to do. And once you've done that and you bring the friction down, the ability to then make that service line really profitable is key. And that's why I think this one's really fun and really important.
Without a doubt. And by nature, I think accountants are very conservative. They're conservative in the spirit of serving their clients so that they can deliver remarkable client outcomes. And I think removing that friction through our embedded API integration is really helping it become a no-brainer situation. And I know we share about 250 mutual clients today, and I'm sure that's going to expand transformationally as this partnership continues to gain steam. But I think overall there's a light bulb moment that goes off when firms see the integration because they're like, why wouldn't I do this? It's so obvious. And those are the right partnerships that I think those are the partnerships that yield that type of reaction, where it's like, I should have not only been doing this today, but for, the full tenure of my firm. And, when you can kind of remove the friction through these API integrations, doing it in a secure manner, that's borderline mindless, but it's a non-discretionary filing that needs to be done from clients, and the clients don't want to do it themselves. The employees at the firm don't necessarily want to do it. The technology this day and age is very capable, and we have our team every step of the way to kind of support so that folks aren't just working without the white glove customer support that they might be used to. So I think that's a key piece as well, alongside the profitability, getting out of spreadsheets, having everything in one place, having everything nice and secure. What were some of the trends that you saw at Scaling New Heights, which we were just in person at? What were some of the trends that you saw in the realm of partnerships that were successful versus some that are less successful? Because we've certainly seen plenty that have been a little bit clunky, a little bit more co-marketing than necessarily embedded. But when you do find mutual partners that are willing to come together and do a proper integration to drive this client experience, I think that's the ideal outcome. But what were some of the themes you saw?
It's interesting. So we've heard throughout, to move just outside Scaling New Heights in general, our customers, which, thank you for all for choosing both our platforms overall. But, they're very progressive and forward leaning. And again, they really want peace of mind, not only from the solutions they use, but they're providing peace of mind to their clients. And they've said over and over again, we want integrations with depth. We want the ability to have the systems that are doing what they need to do them successfully without me being involved in it, and then having it just work like it's supposed to. And that's been an adage since, my time at Intuit back 20 something years ago, which was a lot of these integrations were really light, and, maybe might just move contact information. But, the point of them is to make the, make the lives of everyone easier, both clients and the accounting firm itself. And at Scaling New Heights, it was a bigger show. There was more vendors on the floor, and there's just more vendors in the space overall. And what accountants really want, and what folks have told us is, look, I want to know which ones are the solutions that are going to be working best, not only in the job that they solve, but working with the systems that I have. Because most firms will have, at the low end, 8 core systems up to 18, depending on their size, from being a single person firm up to the big ones. And they want those ones to all work seamlessly together. And so I think that's where the really separation of what's going on now and going forward. We were lucky enough and I guess maybe thoughtful enough to come out with this sort of technology you guys are using in that integration called integrated workflows. And that's the ability for these multiple systems to share not only just data, but business logic, and make sure that they're reflecting in one another what to do, and making sure that the orchestration engine that is Karbon is able to understand what's happening in the system using to serve. And that's been a big game changer. I think that's why this integration works so well, which is you're able to just step through what you need to do. You're able to go to the system where that work is being done, and it's reflected in the other systems of choice. And you don't have to be manually checking things off or looking at things. And the information then is placed where you expect it to be, in that singular client view. that's the true test of a great integration is you just, as someone who uses it, it just works like you expect it. And the information's where it needs to be. That's all it comes down to. But it means you've got to put the work in. And that's where, again, I think this is a good example of that. And that's where, we had at Scaling New Heights. We have some integrations that are like that there. And those are the ones that folks really rave about. And that's where, again, we talked about the 250 that we have today that are raving about it. And I'm sure that most people are listening to this. If you haven't already, take a look at it and you'll see why it's special.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this. We want to help bring awareness so that not just the 250, but all several thousands of firms that use Karbon. I don't even know what the number is these days or if we can disclose that, but I know that's multiple thousands. We want this to be a part of your current firm offering. Compliance as a business, compliance as a service. Your clients need it. It's available in Karbon. Why not give it a go? So, I think another trend that I picked up going to not only Scaling New Heights, but other conferences as well, is everyone's preparing for this succession plan for their firm, the transfer of the operations to the next generation, preparing for maybe a sale at one point to maybe a private equity firm. There's a lot of consolidation that's gone on in the space recently, but it's really eliminating the tribal knowledge that's going to lead to maximizing the value of your firm when that time does come. And a lot of folks right now are going through year-end planning, and they're trying to figure out what are those systems that we're going to get in place in 2027 to prepare ourselves for the sale, maybe in 2028 or beyond. Is that a trend that you've been experiencing? Have you seen firms either get acquired or firms that are acquiring others seek to use a practice management solution to help make sense of kind of an acquisition integration?
Yeah, we had, when I was leading Zero back 12, 15 years ago, it's always been a situation of there's not enough talent. There's always been this sort of looming sort of graduation of firm owners into retirement. And the modernization of the firm, ultimately increases enterprise value of the firm. We've seen since the outset of COVID a large amount of M&A activity and private equity funds coming into the space. And when you look at how the larger firms get larger, and it's just propagated all the way down the chain. We're fortunate on the Karbon side. We're a really progressive platform, so we've seen a lot of M&A activity within the Karbon base itself. We're Karbon firms by Karbon firms, or Karbon firms by non-Karbon firms, and then bring them into becoming Karbon firms, become really efficient. And for those that are going into, they want to be able to sell their business, they generally, my comment is technology is an accelerant, and it can accelerate good and accelerate bad. So the first thing is to get your processes, document them, understand them, get them in a system to be able to have that heritage and that knowledge, like you said, and then use that as your center point to then figure out what are the systems of choice that you want to place within that sort of context. And then to start go down and put that system stack in place that's going to be your core 6 to 8, maybe 10. And then ultimately, operationalize the firm. It's funny because I wrote a book. It's behind me here, A Scale with Purpose, and the last chapter is really around enterprise value. And we talk about M&A. We talk about how do you increase enterprise value. And it's funny because some of the firms that we talk to, the same prescription for making a good business is the same prescription you might do in succession planning. And a lot of them came out of doing all of that hard work to realize, I actually don't want to walk away from the business. I just want to keep running it forward. So, the prescription's the same. If you want to increase the enterprise value and run a great firm, then, modernization of not only your processes, but then maybe of your tech stack is going to be an effective way to do that.
In this day and age, I'm sure you've interfaced with enough of these private equity investors or investors in your company, or those looking to invest directly into accounting firms specifically. Is practice management infrastructure truly the backbone of any firm that will be acquired? I mean, is a firm going to sell for less if they don't have an efficient practice management solution in place?
Yeah, it comes down to when you look at a firm, there's really three centers of data. It's the financials, it's the work, and it's the relationships. And those things need to be need to be well established when someone's looking at the business. And the reason why the work platform is important is because it's how the business is actually run and functioning. And so, one of the criteria of looking at a sort of a firm, and one of its tenets is really, what is the way that they're able to get the work done in an efficient manner. And so it's not just, it used to be like, how much revenue can you generate? We'd have that conversation at sort of these conferences, like, or, how many employees do you have? In the 2020s, it's all been about profitability. And that's all that, in, someone who's buying a business, they want to see profitability and growth. They want to see that your gross margins are really healthy, but that you're actually, the business is improving year on year. And it's just that simple. And, with that comes the systems that actually drive that sort of efficiency. So a lot of times, private equity and whatnot, they don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. And so they're looking for those core systems like the practice management system and the processes therein and the team members that they're going to be taking on, to be able to know that this thing's going to efficiently run and scale once they get involved. Um, Part of it has been the valuations for a lot of folks have been, we'll go take the business and basically cut 50% of it because the book of business can't transfer with the new way of working. And so when you've already put the new way of working in, then the business is understood on transfer that your majority of those clients and how in the revenue you're generating are going to be maintained. And now you can expand the pie with each client with new services and more efficient way of running.
Yeah. Before becoming a founder myself, I worked in financial services private equity for nearly a year. It was prior to private equity getting involved in the accounting world. At the time, we were acquiring insurance brokers and wealth management practices and third party administrators of 401k businesses. But before too long, I had an inkling that the accounting world was going to get rolled up because you just had a ton of folks reaching that point in their career where they needed to sell to someone. And quite frankly, the accounting business model is very durable. It's a non-discretionary service. But I can speak firsthand that at the point of any transaction that we did, if compliance and the registrations were not well kept and in good standing at the point of us presenting an LOI or pushing forward into diligence as the legal bills start to rack up, um, when compliance wasn't in check, it would just erode the deal value out of the gates because it was almost a seed that gets planted in your head that's like, what else isn't well kept? This is the most fundamental thing of your business, operating in jurisdictions and doing that in a very high quality way. If you can't even file a form with the Secretary of State on time, then who's to say you're serving their clients right? Who's to say you're going to build that 10-year plus relationship that's going to lead to that high recurring retention? Compliance really is fundamental to serving your clients. They're doing it with someone. Why not it be you? And why not it be you without you having to own the work? Oh, by the way, you'll also monetize it while providing your clients a better experience. That's why when we demo the Karbon file forms integration, we're getting these aha moments and reactions is because it's so obvious that firms can really lean into what they care about, which is serving clients, retaining business, providing a remarkable experience for their staff, and then building that enterprise value, which is really going to bolster with industry leading technology and strong retention and sticky relationships that are built on trust with your clients. So if you're able to deliver those things by using industry leading tools, I think you'll be poised to have a great exit whenever that might be. And we're seeing more and more young folks taking over firms for the first time and really getting these tools in place so that they can build a business that is going to be valuable 10, 20 years down the road, but then also going to be well positioned to acquire other businesses that might be looking to sell, maybe not to one of these private equity acquirers, but someone who's a little bit more mom and pop kind of grassroots. So those are a few trends that I've seen with kind of a perspective on both sides, having previously worked in the private equity space. Ian, anything else that folks using Karbon or folks who want to use Karbon should know before I let you go today?
Um, I think the biggest thing is, when you're thinking about moving to a practice management platform, it's really around it's spring cleaning. It's really understanding, the way that you worked before might not be the way that you work going forward. So it's really a change management journey. And that change management can get you to a really magical place on the other side. But, that becomes both a tops down and a bottoms up approach. And so you really need to embrace the experience in the team. And the processes are what's king within that sort of transition. And so the way you work is going to be the same in terms of how what you're using in the systems. You might decide to switch out, but how you're going to go ahead and formalize that is going to be dependent on the platform you choose. And so for folks that come to Karbon, if you want to run the most efficient, most effective firm, then our product is the great one for you. But it does mean that you might have to look at things a little bit differently, because the way you did it on a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet is just not going to be efficient, in the way that you want to run a modern firm today. So that's one of my things I tell folks overall. And I think this goes back to looking at all the different services you want to bring together, and then looking at those particular platforms, like file forms and whatnot, around, well, how are you going to automate your business? How are you going to be able to do those services, across the board, that's going to be able to drive that, ultimately, that client trust. And that's where, again, I'm super excited again, about us catching up today, but also the integration coming out.
Sounds like there's more value to be had with a more remarkable client experience and more profitable along the way. Seems like a win on all sides. So, Ian, before I let you go, if folks want to learn more about Karbon and learn more about our integration, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you and your team?
Yeah, you can go and just look online to, if you want to interested in Karbon itself, karbonhq.com. For us, you just email us at partnerships@karbonhq.com. We'll get back to you. But also, if they want to learn more about file forms, Frank, where would they go for file forms?
Well, if you're already a Karbon user, you can go into your apps connector section and go ahead and sign right up. There's literally no friction. We have an API key that will take all of your current entities from your Karbon dashboard, transpose them right into file forms with the click of a mouse. And from there, all your filings are queued up. You'll have all your annual report deadlines teed up, ready to go. And then ultimately the ability to aggregate and consolidate all of your registered agents into one place. We offer those services in all 50 states. So that's one way if you're already working with Karbon. Another way is obviously fileforms.com or info@fileforms.com, where our team can support and educate you more on this integration. We'd be happy to demo it for you if you're on the cusp of deciding which practice management solution to go to. This could be something that can bring you over that edge and make it a very easy decision. So it's really exciting to be partnered with you, Ian, a pioneer in the space. And I love working with your team as well. Sam and the rest of the group have been tremendous, and very, very looking forward to the remainder of the year and getting this partnership well off the ground and everything thereafter. So thank you again for your partnership and your trust in file forms, and looking forward to serving as many firms as we can going forward. So
Appreciate it, Frank. Appreciate all the things you guys have done on your side too.
my pleasure. And I got to read your book. I haven't had enough time with all these conferences going on, but I was really appreciative that you signed that for me. And I can't wait to read those. I get a lot out of those books, and they've been transformational as we've built our business over the last few years. So looking forward to that as well. All right, folks. Well, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another episode. Thank you so much.